welcome back to the fourth episode of Between a Rock and a Hard Place. I'm Jackie Pape.
And I'm Emily Strahan.
This week, we decided to turn our show, which was once for stuck people, into what the results are. The results came in on last week, and Donald Trump is the new president-elect. That being said, there have been a lot of protests, and a lot of people are really upset. Many of those people being millennials. While millennials are a lot of the people out protesting, saying, he is not my president, an interesting stat that we found is 1 in 10 millennials who showed up to vote didn't vote for either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, but rather voted for a third-party candidate.
Mm-hmm. So with that being said, this episode is really about debriefing what is going on post-election. This post-election cycle has been like nothing else we have seen. Between social media, protesting, as Jackie had mentioned, candlelight vigils here on Wake Forest University campus, it's really shocking to see how many people seem to care so much about the election, post-election, when a lot of people didn't even show up to vote. So it's interesting that people want their voices heard now, and people don't want Donald Trump to be inaugurated in January. So for this week, we're going to bring in a voice, a person who was never a fan of Donald Trump, but he is actively involved here at Wake Forest as a member of Wake Radio and Deep Connection. Bradley Singleton is here to talk to us about the black vote and a few other things relating to this debrief. Welcome.
Hey ladies, how are y'all?
Good, how are you?
Oops, sorry.
Should I give you a hug? So I feel like I actually know you.
Right,
Bradley's
right.
in some of our journalism classes. So the first thing we want to talk about is we want to talk briefly, because it's important to discuss, that Hillary won the popular vote, but she did not win the electoral vote, thus Donald Trump is president. And people are saying we should get rid of the Electoral College. Is that people whining because their voice wasn't heard and it would be in favor? Because this has happened before. Or is there something to be said?
I think generally people are upset with the Electoral College because it doesn't appropriately represent all areas that voted and that participated in this year's election. But we saw that Donald Trump, he brought out a different demographic to the polls this year. And you saw that some of those states where, like, the red states, or the states are normally blue, turned red because of these small areas, like in suburban Pennsylvania, for example, Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida, even states like that. And the way the electoral college goes, if these areas show up to vote and they win that state, then they get those amount of seats. So I think that's why people are kind of,
But would people be upset? Would people be as upset if Hillary won about the Electoral College?
No.
No.
No, most definitely not.
It's
So is that unfair to the people who supported Donald Trump, though?
In a way, it kind of is, because again, it's like you can't blame anybody but yourself in that sense. Like, you decide not to turn out and vote, primarily the black voters or female voters or millennial voters and stuff like you mentioned earlier. So I think it is kind of unfair to say, it is kind of unfair in a sense.
Well, what's also interesting is that I was reading an article earlier today that said a lot of people didn't turn out to vote because they thought she had it in the bag. And why turn out and vote? And it doesn't matter. I'm not going to waste my time waiting in line because she's already won.
Right, and I think also millennials were upset that Bernie Sanders didn't get the nomination for the Democratic Party, because a lot of millennials were for Bernie Sanders and his socialist type of movement, and when they found that Hillary Clinton was the nominee, they feel like their voices had been ignored, and that the electoral or the primary and all that process was rigged in a sense, because they had gone so hard for Bernie Sanders, but then you got this woman who's not speaking their language that gets elected as a Democratic nominee. So I think that's why also the millennials didn't turn out to vote. They voted third party because they felt like it wasn't fair that the person that they wanted didn't get the primary didn't win in the primaries for the Democratic Party.
Right, and then specifically a specific group of millennials. President Barack Obama got a lot of votes that Hillary did not get, and a lot of those people stayed home, primarily the black vote. Can you shed some light on why people didn't show up in that demographic?
Yeah, and that's what really upset me, because I think, again, she didn't speak, a lot of African Americans didn't think she spoke the language that they spoke. They didn't feel the need to vote for a woman that they feel wasn't for them. And also, I've also heard, which is kind of an ignorant approach, even in my opinion, that the African Americans took, was that they believe that the system and all that is set up against them anyway, so why vote for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton when at the end of the day they're going to fail, like, regardless of the outcome. And to me, my thing is like, well, people died and fought for you to vote, so why not just exercise some right to vote for either party, either, candidate? Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's the biggest thing, that she didn't speak the language of the millennials, mm-hmm. like Barack Obama did. And also, she has had scandals with calling blacks super predators, the prison pipeline in the 90s that the Clintons were known for, and just the trustworthiness of the Clintons weren't there, which is why the African Americans didn't turn out and vote for her like they did Barack Obama. And also, Barack Obama was the first black president, so that obviously is going to draw like some black voters.
Right. A lot of people don't really find her that genuine, and it wasn't just the black votes; it was Hispanic votes. She didn't really win that much, and even women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I want to turn it to another page of this whole other separate thing, and that is social media and the role that is played in the election. Facebook's under some heat right now, but I want to specifically talk about posts that students and friends and not friends, maybe not friends anymore, have been posting about the election on Facebook. Bradley, what have you seen happen on Facebook, and is it right?
About like the whole "not my president"
the hashtag "not my president." People will pontificate on Facebook about why it's so terrible that anyone would have ever thought to have voted for Donald Trump. If you voted for Donald Trump, you are a racist, you are a bigot, and you are not my friend anymore.
African Americans and like millennials are kind of scared because they know the type of rhetoric that Donald Trump has said in the primaries leading up to like him being elected. And now, like, all this stuff is like coming into reality in a sense. And then, like, he just announced who he wants to vote for or who he wants to be a part of his cabinet. And again, that's making people scared. So people are trying to go to social media, the only outlet that we really have to voice their opinions. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm going back to the earlier statement. I don't think it's kind of a contradictory statement because you're saying "not my president," you're saying all these hashtags and creating all this, but you didn't vote first.
He is going to be president.
So instead of doing all this, you just like find ways to, I guess, grow and come together mm-hmm. as like a country in a sense.
Well, I think it's just so ironic that especially on my Facebook page and probably yours as well, the people who are so disgusted with the fact that Donald Trump is president, saying "not my president," is creating another divide, mm-hmm. Another division in the country, which we have so many of. Is that right? Should we just say, okay, Donald Trump is the president-elect, whether you like it or not? Let's rally behind him. We can still vote. We can still campaign for the causes that mean a lot to our hearts. Mm-hmm. But it's not the end of the world. Or is it the end of the world, Bradley?
Again, I think from a minority standpoint, they feel like it is. Mm-hmm. Just because, or even sometimes I feel like it is. Because, for example, I'll give an example. So one of the people that he wants to put in his cabinet mm-hmm. is Rudy Giuliani. And one of his policies is stop and frisk. Mm-hmm. Stop and frisk is more catered towards, we know, the African American community. And once he implemented stop and frisk, so what stop and frisk is like you get stopped by the police, you get 3 strikes. The first strike is getting stopped, second is like, what are you doing? That's second strike, and if you get arrested, that's the third strike, you're gone. So it's like things like that is what is making African Americans and other minority groups feel scared that Donald Trump is the president. And then the whole building the wall rhetoric that he said at the very beginning is obviously making Latinos scared. And then you get to the Muslim community, he's saying send them back and that their religion isn't welcome here. And I think that's where all of like the Facebook and Twitter and all those movements are coming from, because they're finally saying like it's not fair to have a president that stands for all these things that doesn't help us any. It doesn't allow us to move forward as like race or as a religion or things like that.
Right, and he gained a lot of supporters because of that type of rhetoric. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. It will be interesting to see what he ends up doing. He's already said, we won't build a wall. It'll be more of a fence. Yada yada yada. But there is some interesting dialogue on at least my Facebook feed that says, you know what, this didn't really work out in our favor. I'm not really happy with it, but this is a wake-up call to us. We are millennials. Our voice matters, and now we should start campaigning for 2020, and we should start doing things, and this means that we should go out and vote, and we should get people who are intelligent and smart to rally behind candidates, and do you think that more people should be saying those type of messages? Like, that's so much more productive, in my opinion.
It is, and I think as millennials, we're just more of like a go out and do type of generation. But as you know, our parents' generation is a generation that's more like stuck in the past. They're more like conservative on certain issues and things like that. But I definitely feel that millennials, they're developing the right sort of idea, and that we need to come together and rally behind a certain person to help represent us as a country, and thinking ahead of time instead of thinking now in the present.
Right. We can't wallow in pity. We have
Right.
to.
Because you can't change it.
You can't change it.
Hindsight's
It's done, it's done.
2020.
Right.
You know, we have to
Exactly.
move forward and hope that it's better next time.
But I think honestly, like the protest things that are going on in like on the West Coast and Oregon and things like that, it's like every other protest. Honestly, like it'll last for a couple weeks, and then after that, it's going to die down. You know, but hopefully this doesn't divide us like you were saying earlier as a
Right.
nation.
Divide us even more.
Even more, yeah.
Exactly. Well, I agree with you. I think it will all die down, and Donald Trump will be in office starting in January, and we'll have to wait and sort of see what happens. But for those of us who were stuck about the election before, we can't be stuck anymore, because the people have spoken. The democracy has spoken, and Donald Trump is the president-elect of the United States. And whether that makes you cry and scream and want to move to Canada, or whether that makes you want to cry and yell woohoo because you're so happy, that's the results. But thank you very much. Thanks so
Thanks
much
for
for coming
having
today.
Thank you guys.
They help, and you'll look really good on the screen.
Yeah.